My name is Elizabeth Mary Llewellyn. I've got a sister, Diana, who's 3 years younger than I am, Diana Margaret.
Diana Margaret Llewellyn Mukuma.
So I'm very much brought up almost for Anglo-Catholic, really. My grandfather was in the church. It's been a great influence on my life.
I'm a Quaker, the Society of Friends. Being a Quaker is more a way of life rather than a set of rules. I'm hugely interested in politics. I'm very cross with party politics, but I do vote always, and I've always voted Labour. Nothing's ideal. The Labour Party has a lot of faults, and I think politicians have huge amount of faults, and they mostly lie. Opportunities is terribly important to me. There's a huge inequality in this country, and it's got a lot worse in the last 20 years. And I feel very strongly that Thatcher has a lot to answer for. I do remember working and going to meetings in what was then the GLC, the Greater London Authority, which with a stroke of a pen Maggie Thatcher just got rid of. You know, she didn't like it, so it's now a Marriott hotel.
I've always supported the Conservatives. I joined them a long time ago. I was born in Bath on the 26th of May 1934.
I was born in Combe Down, a little place called Combe Down near Bath, in 1937.
I didn't go to school, proper school, until I was about 12 or 13 because of wartime. When the war came, my father went to fight in the army. We were living at Radley College, where he was a schoolmaster. We had a governess called Miss Reynolds, who was a dwarf, if you call them dwarfs, and she was about the same size as we all were, and she gave us a very, very good education.
I did have a favourite teacher who I asked if she could be my second mother, and Miss Hallett. I don't even remember what she taught me because I didn't learn very much at school, to be honest. There was no such thing as teenager, so you actually went from being a child to a grown-up very quickly, and I became a grown-up probably at about 14.
He loved America and did very well and became a real little American. And the subsequent ship was torpedoed and a lot of children lost their lives. I think maybe they all did, I don't know. But after that they suspended any more evacuations of children to America. So he was in the last batch to go. And when he came back, he went to church one day and he saw me, and I think I was sitting in front of him with long pigtails, and he thought, she's a bit of all right. And so he started chatting me up after that.
I've lived in a lot of places, actually. I moved away from home when I was about 17 and came up to London and lived with some young people that my parents felt would be suitable to be in loco parentis, was the term they used in those days. And I wanted very much to be an actress and go on the stage. I actually wanted to sing. And the condition was, well, it wasn't vetoed completely, but the suggestion of my parents was that I should get a proper job first. And I tried proper training, and I made several attempts at that. I then thought I might want to be a buyer for a big department store, and I was training to be a buyer at Harrods, which was extremely boring. And I felt very restless. I actually had wanted to go to uni, but not a lot of girls went to uni. Anyway, I hadn't done well in school. So I was a bit in a quandary about what to do. And at one point I remember my father said to me, I'm sure I'm using it as an excuse, but I said I wanted to go to uni, and he said to me, well, why would you want to go to uni? You'll get married anyway. And so I think in a way I thought, well, I'll get married anyway. So I got married when I was 18, and so that put paid to a career at that time.
It wasn't long after he came to our house, knocked on the front door and asked my father's permission to play tennis with me. He said he had half an hour before his mother was going to come and collect him. This was 9:30 in the morning. So we went off and played tennis. I had to serve underarm. I wasn't very good, but I have a feeling I beat him. And he happened to leave his tennis racket behind, if you can believe it. Which meant, of course, as he lived in Oxford and we lived really only a short distance away, that he had to come over in the holidays to collect the racket, which meant he could see me again. He was in the army in Germany, was a very good skier, and had been chosen for the Olympic squad for the cross-country skiing, so he went to Norway to train. And when he was in Norway, he fell in love with a Norwegian. He was very keen on this girl, Anna Marie, I think I used to hear about her. And I had a boyfriend. Ray knew about this, and he came and took me out to a meal or just came to visit me. And he said afterwards, he suddenly thought, gosh, if I don't do something, I'm going to lose that girl. And I really am quite keen on her. I think I'd better pull my socks up. So he took me out for a drive. We went up to Shotover Hill in the pouring rain and went for a walk. I think we then had to get back in the car because it was raining so hard. And then he proposed. And apparently I said, yes, please, which I think sounds rather odd. And so that was it. And that was in the November 1956, and we were married in April 57. So it's going to be 60 years next year that we've been married. Then we went off on our honeymoon. Caught a plane to Paris, which was delayed, which saddened us because we had to leave a really good party and then spent many hours sitting at Heathrow. And then from Paris we went to the south of France. We hired a car, we stayed in a place called St Raphael, went along the coast, went to a little village called St Agnes, which is up behind Cannes somewhere. Very remote, and being April, I think we were the first people to stay in this little hotel. And the beds were, it was one bed, was incredibly damp. I don't think anybody had slept in it for about a year, and I don't think there was any heating in the place. We were very frozen, so we went to bed in all our clothes. We happened to have a bottle of this St Raphael, which was an aperitif we bought in St Raphael on our travels, and so we sat up in bed and drank this aperitif and slept quite well after that.
Jumping on ahead 20 years or so, I found myself in America with my second husband, and then I did go to university in Philadelphia and got a degree, and also extended my training in child development and got interested in that field, and began working in a fairly respectable clinic there in Philadelphia. It was quite well known at the time, treating autistic children, which was quite an unknown diagnosis for a child pretty much in those days. We're talking about the early 70s. And then had a sort of womanly crisis that women often do have, of maybe I'm not any good at this job at all. Perhaps they're just keeping me on because they like me. So I quit my job and went out to the west coast of America, from the east coast to the west coast. Drove across there to find a different job and see if I could hack it doing the same kind of work but in a different place. And I did that for a couple of years until my father died, and I felt the need to rethink what I was doing in America, having only gone for 2 years to America and finding I'd been there 19. By then I had 6 children, and I decided to come back to England to be nearer to my mother and my sister, who I hardly saw. So I was so out of touch with the UK and what had gone on. Everything was different. Obviously we had joined the common market, we had different money than when I had left. I left in 64 and came back in 83. I was fortunate to get a flat here in London, the one I'm sitting in now, which I got in a magnificent way. I was very upset and angry and cross and feeling very bitter about having come back to England, which I thought was the land of milk and honey, and where I felt that probably race relations were very good. To find that because I had 2 mixed race children and a very foreign sounding surname, was having quite a lot of difficulty getting housing and living where I wanted to live. So I wrote quite an impassioned letter to a member of the royal family about it, saying what a disgraceful state of affairs I felt things were in, but not really up, just sort of venting really, not expecting a reply of any kind. And about 10 days later, when I was staying with my mother came up to the bedroom. I was in bed and hands shaking, saying, "You've got a letter with the 3 feathers on it." And I said, "I don't know what you mean." She said, "Well, it's from the palace." And it was a response to my letter saying that they were offering any help or advice they could, put it that way, something like that. But it ended up in me getting an old empty property that belonged to the duchy, which is this one, which has recently been sold to a housing association. So I'm still renting, but very happily renting. And so in a way, I've had lots of good luck in my life, I feel. I was a Gestalt psychotherapist and worked until I retired 2 years ago. Well, I might get a bit forgetful. I was worried about getting forgetful and not remembering the sort of details you have to remember when you're working closely with somebody. So I decided to sack myself before I got sacked in some way.
I haven't worked since I've been married. I worked before I was married. And the only paid work I've had since being married, for nearly 60 years, was right at the beginning. We wanted to go on a skiing holiday, but we hadn't got much money, so I did a job demonstrating sunbeam mixers in Heelus in Reading in the shop. And if somebody wanted to buy one of the mixers, I would go to their home and give them a home demonstration. But most of the time I was in the shop demonstrating this mixer with Sally Sunbeam written on my bosom, next door to a girl who had Hot Point written on her bosom, selling Hot Point washing machines, which was all highly amusing, but quite good fun. So that's all I've really done. And then we had children, and I was a busy housewife.
I then thought, I need to do something. What am I going to do with every day? So I thought I'd do some voluntary work of some kind. And then I thought I'd like to do voluntary work involving the dog. I had a dog by then. So I looked into pets as therapy and took her to see if she'd be suitable, which in the end she turned out to be. I was then asked where I wanted to work, so I elected to work in hospitals, if possible, or with children with emotional difficulties, both of which I do now. It's curious to me that my sister Elizabeth and I have such different political views, completely opposed, and always have been, because I was recollecting that as a teenager she had on the back of her bicycle seat a little leaflet about Airy Neve. I was sort of posturing at that time about being, in the Labour Party. But I probably didn't say so to her. A very cathartic, well not cathartic, but interesting moment came probably a year or 2 years ago now, when the movie came out about Maggie Thatcher. And I decided to take my sister to it, and thinking I would probably hate it, and wondering what our reaction would be seeing this film, because I wasn't very keen on Margaret Thatcher, and my sister was a huge admirer of hers. And we went to the movie, and we both came out and went and had a cup of coffee and looked at each other and said, "Well, wasn't that a good film?" And it was we both liked different things in it. I mean, it confirmed some of my prejudices about her, about Maggie Thatcher, which I think my sister didn't really notice or overlooked, and it confirmed my sister's positive prejudices about Maggie Thatcher. So we both went away happy. My sister did pull my leg yesterday because we went out for lunch, and she said, "I'm going to take you for lunch, but I'm only going to pay for you if you vote to stay in the EU." So I said, "Well, I haven't made my mind up yet." So we had lunch, and she told me a story about somebody she had bought lunch for the week before, who she thought was in the In campaign, who after he had finished his lunch said he was going to vote to go out. So she double checked with me again, and I did say I hadn't quite decided yet what I was going to do. I don't know why why we both had different experiences. I think she loved school, because I have agreed to go with her to yet another old girls' school day in June, which I hated last time I went. But she kind of enjoys going with somebody, and I don't really mind. It's not going to be that much of a hassle. So I'm going to go again with her this year to my old school, where I was pretty miserable, to be honest, but still, it looks very different, so it looks like a kind of foreign school anyway. And I was thinking about how well we get on now together. We did never not get on, except we didn't see a lot of each other, because we went in totally different tangential directions, I think, probably to avoid conflict. And so now that we're both elderly ladies, there's plenty we can agree about and do enjoy doing together, which is rather nice, actually.